Hopefully we're going live. Okay, everybody, welcome to the channel. Tonight we are going to do Beasts of the Paranormal. On the panel we've got Claire, Wisteria Elemental Witch. I got her first because I always get a bloody name the wrong way around. We've got Scott and Sarah from Paranormal in History, and we've got Sam from Life After Life TV Productions. But a shortened the name to Productions because it's smaller on the bar. We have gone a bit technical tonight. We've got a PowerPoint presentation that I've been working on all day. I've never used PowerPoint before, so it's been quite an education. So you'll have to excuse me when I turn around, because what I will do is I'll basically read it off to people just in case they can't read it. Then we will ask the panel their opinions on what they think of it, and I'll give you my opinion on whether I think it's a genuine paranormal entity. I suppose that's the best word, isn't it? Or not. And then you're allowed to type in the chat to see what you think it is. Right, so I'll share the screen now because I've just checked it and it looks like it does fit on okay with the 5 of us. So there we go. Look, there's our PowerPoint presentation. As you can see, we are starting with the Owlman, otherwise known as the monster of Falmouth Bay. Hang on. There we go. Right, summary. Now, this entity, the Owlman, was originally investigated by someone called Tony, and I presume that is Shiles or Shields. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was originally spotted in St Mornan and St Stephen's Church in the town of Mornan in Cornwall. The first report of the Owlman was first reported on the 17th of April in 1976 by 2 young girls called June and Vicky Melling, who were on holiday in Cornwall at the time. The girls claimed to have seen a large feathered birdman. That was their description for it. And they said it was hovering over the tower of the church. Apparently, it scared the girls so much when they encountered this thing that their father decided to cut the holiday short, and he returned home with his daughters. So they were actually the original 2 girls who saw it. They were young girls from what I can gather. I think they were about 12 years old and 9 years old, something like that at the time, but they apparently spotted this feathered birdman over the church's tower or steeple, whatever you want to call it. Right. The second report occurred on the 3rd of July in 1976 by Sally Chapman and Barbara Perry, who at the time were aware of the previous sighting. So bear that in mind before I read this bit out. They were aware that these other 2 girls had seen this Owlman. They were apparently out camping one night and they reported seeing a big owl with pointed ears, as big as a man, with large black pincer claws. Okay? Now, there have been further sightings reported in 1978, 1979, 1989, and 1995. In 2000, there was a report of someone hearing a loud owl-like sound in Mullion Churchyard. Now, I ain't sure where Mullion Churchyard is, but I'm presuming it's either in Mornan or pretty close to it. What is interesting to note here is there has actually been very few sightings of Owlman, but it definitely originated in the county of Cornwall, which is down in the south of England, southwest, I believe. Yeah. Right. So on the last screen for this, we're doing pros and cons. Now, the only pros I can think to this one is that it was actually sighted by multiple witnesses. The cons are a slightly different thing. I've got a lot more of them. Right. Now, apparently, Tony Shields was known to create hoaxes. So this is the first thing that you have to bear in mind when considering the Owlman. All these reports and all subsequent reports that went through the media actually went through this Tony Shields first. So all this evidence of the Owlman was actually gathered by this one guy called Tony Shields. Another important con to notice is a lot of these witnesses were friends or family of Tony Shields. Oh. Okay. At the time of the Owlman sightings, there was also a report that there was a European eagle owl loose in the area. Now, I don't know how many people actually know what a European eagle owl is, but they are quite a large owl. They're not the size of a person, obviously, but to anybody over here because I don't think they're indigenous to the UK. They're in mainland Europe. I don't believe, I may be wrong, but I don't believe they're indigenous to England in particular. They normally stand about 2 feet tall. They're brown and beigey coloured. Okay, that was my computer making strange noises. But there was one actually reported in the area at the time. The other negative is owls are actually known to nest in church towers. So, and it's interesting to note that all these Owlman reports were actually based around churches and church steeples. So it is very interesting. So I know there's been a resurgence lately in the interest in Owlman, but Owlman, hi Dorothy, hi Jace, hi Maureen, hi Nicole, hi Jack, I'll just quickly say these, hi Shaz, hi Steve. If I've missed anybody, sorry, because I'm actually reading this as I'm talking, so I ain't looking at the chat. But yeah, those are the main cons I could think of. Obviously, you lot may come up with some more or some pros. But like I say, the only pro I could think with this case was it was actually cited by multiple people. That is the only thing that I can say is a positive about it. I will say that the second lot of witnesses were aware of the initial account. And if they did see this owl in the churchyard at the time when it happened, they could have, you know, because kids are kids, they would see this owl as a lot bigger than what it actually was. Okay, so I'm just going to write that screen down a second so that we're all in big enough screens. So, Sam, what is your opinion on Owlman and what do you think about that you've done? And for me, personally, I'll give you my opinion first. I think Owlman is a pile of crap. I'll be honest with you. I think it's total and utter bullshit. I think this has all started. Hi, Dave. I think this has all started as a consequence of 2 young girls saw a bird that they're not actually used to seeing, and it all got blew up out of proportion. I ain't saying they did it deliberately, because I don't think they did, but I do genuinely believe that, you know, it was just an exaggerated opinion of a bird they saw. Right, Sam, go on, you pull faces and laugh now.
When something like this happens, right, and possibly misidentified,
yeah,
and it goes through the papers, it goes through word of mouth,
yeah,
then people are looking for it and sometimes convince themselves that they've actually seen something.
Yeah, I've done it. I'll admit to it. I've done that in past time.
Everybody's guilty of it.
Do you know?
Yeah.
A cross between an owl and a man. It looks like it looks like something created by fiction to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know? I don't know. Maybe the beginning story was a large owl, and the kids were young at the time. We have to remember that.
Yeah, yeah.
So the story gets blown out of proportion. Of course, human beings have a habit of adding to stories, so it gets more and more elaborate as the story goes. You know.
Yeah.
So I'm not convinced by that at all.
Yeah. What is interesting to note between those 2 reports, and this is basically all that the Owlman is based on, is those 2 original reports, is the second lot of girls were actually older than the first lot. And if you listen to that, what I've just read out, they did actually describe it as an owl as big as a man. They didn't actually describe it as a man and owl sort of thing. And again, I think because they're not familiar with eagle owls and stuff like that, and knowing of the previous report, it probably all got blew up in their minds, and that eagle owl went from 2 foot tall to 6 foot tall.
How can, sometimes, when kids are small, their perception of size, they must have seen this from a distance, and
yeah.
Well,
they claimed it was hovering above the actual church steeple. So you
well, the
yourself
light, there could have been different lighting there as well. That can obviously lead to different perception of things. The lighting,
but everybody here knows how tall your average church steeple is. So you're looking at least 40, 50 feet above the ground. They saw this thing. So, like you say, Sam, you have got to take into account their perception and stuff. Because they would not have been up close to this thing. It would have been a minimum of 50 feet away from them, I'd have thought. Nod and say yes, Sam.
Sorry?
I says nod and say yes.
Case closed, Your Honour.
Yeah, right. So you think it's basically just either fiction or overactive imagination? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to split Sarah and Scott up, so I'll go with Sarah next.
I think it's a load of rubbish, basically.
Right.
I think, obviously, there's been an owl of some description that's been cited, and the story's just kind of on, and it's turned into some big bad beast that lives in the church roof that attacks people or whatever.
So do you think it was a deliberate hoax? Because the guy who all the reports were fed through apparently was a known hoaxer. So do you think that the kids themselves actually blew it up out of proportion, or do you think the guy who was known for causing these hoaxes blew it up out of proportion, or do you think it may have been a combination of the two?
I think that possibly the girls have seen the owl and it's gave them a fright. They've then went back, told their dad, and it's him that's blown it out of proportion to make a story out it to get that bit of fame. Yeah.
But it was stated that it had upset them that much that he cut the holiday short and took them home. So they were genuinely upset over something. Now, I used to have a barn owl as a pet, and I'd got a friend who had actually got a European eagle owl as a pet. Now, he'd actually got two of them. Now, the one was an extremely pleasant. Hi, James. There was one who was an extremely pleasant owl, and the other one was a nasty piece of work. He used to have to go in with a motorcycle helmet and a dustbin lid to feed it because it used to fly. Now, with those second girls, they actually said it came at them with big claws. Stop laughing, Sam. It wasn't funny. You used to have to go in like Sir Lancelot to feed this owl. I kid you not. But it always used to fly at you with its feet outwards, coming for you. So, that is why they would probably perceive these big, and they have got big feet, European eagle owls, I kid you not. They're pretty much the size of a human hand, and that if they'd have seen these big black feet coming at them, and that is what makes me believe that it was actually a European eagle owl that they saw, rather than, the Owlman as such. Claire?
General are just scary anyway.
Yeah. Claire?
Well, you see, I do believe it possibly was a bird of prey because I used to have an Harris hawk, and his pincers were pretty nasty. You wouldn't want to get in, and you could notice when he were flying sometimes, Brett, depending on what time of day it were, they can look bigger than what they actually are, especially when they're from a distance. When they swoop, it can make them look oversized under moonlight or under sunlight. Yeah,
there's also the fact you've got to take into consideration shadows as well.
Yeah,
if they've got the shadow sitting right under them as they come down the roof of a church, that shadow could be 4, 5, 6 times bigger than the actual bird itself.
Exactly, and that's what used to happen with Junior, my bird. He used to look a lot bigger when he were at certain points, but when he come down, he were all right. So maybe they did see a bird. I'm not saying they didn't see a bird. They possibly did, and because they were as young as they were, their imaginations travelled a bit. But then saying that, I also do believe it's possible that the other stories may have just been made up as to elaborate on the first story to keep it going.
Keep it going,
Yeah.
This is what you've got to be careful with areas where they get a reputation for having a particular thing there, because some of these places do benefit financially from a tourism point of view. So you do have to take all those kind of things into consideration as well. Would the locals continue pushing it just to keep it, keep the place more touristy than it normally would be, because there are some pretty villages in Cornwall and there's some ugly villages in Cornwall, and I suppose the slightly less prettier ones, need all the help they can get. I have no idea what this area looks like in Cornwall. I haven't looked. I just know the name of the area where it took place. But it could just be done as a tourist thing. Scott?
I think it's possible that the girls actually believed their own story when they first seen it, because of their age and
young kids.
As Sam says as well, kids, exaggerate stuff, so
I
think it's huge, when it's maybe about 1.5 feet tall or something, but to them it's 10 feet tall, The fathers, they've been home, told their dad, and he's kind of jumped on the story a wee bit. As for the rest of the stories, I think it's touristy, because if you look at the gaps between the reports,
this is the thing that got me. Scott was, there was like 5 or 6 years between them.
You sometimes these things, if you get maybe 10 different accounts of some strange beast, all we're thinking out 6 months, maybe a year down the line, the story's faded out, nobody's interested, they're moved on to something else. But if you keep the story afloat every couple of years, people start to think, well, maybe there is something in this, and it keeps. That's why the stories are spaced out. That's just my opinion, but I think
it's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good opinion.
But, keep the story afloat, basically. But on the whole, I think it's a lot of crap.
Hi, Andy and Carpe. Yeah, so basically, I think it's 5-0 against it not being a genuine Owlman and just being, over exaggeration and misidentification of an owl. Is what I think we're all agreeing on. Yeah, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Right, so that's 5-0 that the Owlman doesn't exist. Right, we'll move on to the next one. And look who we've got now. Slender Man.
Oh, God.
One of my favourite topics. Right, the origins of Slender Man. Slender Man was created on the 10th of June 2009 on a thread of the Something Awful forums, which are a type of creepypasta type thing. Its creator was Eric Knudsen, who posted on the forums under the name of Victor Surge. Why he don't post under his own name, I've no idea. The purpose of the post originally was a Photoshop contest that Something Awful were actually running. It was to show your Photoshopping skills, and it challenged the posters to create paranormal images. I think the ultimate reason they were doing it was because they wanted to create a new comic out of whichever one of these characters was actually created. So, under the name of Victor Surge, Eric Knudsen submitted 2 black and white photos or images which depicted a group of children, to which he then added the image of this tall, ghostly looking figure, which he dubbed Slender Man. The thing was, Knudsen took his submissions a step farther. Not only did he actually submit pictures, he added subtitles to both photographs and claimed they were from supposed abductions by the being in the photos known as Slender Man. Okay? These are the 2 quotes that were added to the photos. Now, this is the quote that was added to the first one. We didn't want to go where we didn't want to kill them, but its persistent silence and outstretched arms horrified and comforted us at the same time. That was apparently a quote by an unknown photographer in 1983 that was then presumed dead. Okay? Now, bear in mind, these were fictional quotes. He made them up to give a context to the photographs. So I'm presuming that quote was actually relating to the 14 children in the picture. Right, now on the second one, this was the following quote. One of 2 recovered photographs from the Stirling City Library blaze. Now, apparently he's claiming this second photograph was retrieved from a library that had burnt down. Notable for being taken the day which 14 children vanished and for what is referred to as the Slender Man. Deformity cited as film defects by officials. Now, what you've got to realise is this image of the Slender Man was really tall and skinny. And that is relating to that the deformities were actually film defects. Again, bear in mind that this was all made up to make the photos more convincing, right? Fire at the library occurred 1 week later. Actual photograph confiscated as evidence. And that second photo was claimed to be taken in 1986 by the photographer Mary Thomas, who had been missing since June the 13th, 1986. Now, Eric had done this to make his photos appear more freaky. None of the information in those quotes is actually genuine, you know, and this is openly admitted. Okay?
Yeah.
The character quickly went viral and a mythical canon was created around the Slender Man, aided by both film and TV. A complete mythological history for the character was created by fans of creepypasta. So basically, the Slender Man went viral on all these creepypasta websites, and people on the website started to write stories about the Slender Man and basically created a complete history for him. Okay? In some of the pictures, it's quite interesting to note, and in some of the creepypasta stories, the Slender Man has actually got masses of tentacles that sprout out his back, and these are used to grab children with. The whole story of the Slender Man is he basically takes children away to another realm sort of thing. I don't believe he actually kills them, but he keeps them in this. He apparently keeps them in this house, you know, just as like an orphanage in another dimension. Okay. Here's where the problem occurs. This canon led to a disturbing twist of events on May the 31st, 2014, when two 12-year-old Wisconsin girls held down a classmate and stabbed her 19 times in a near-fatal attack. They would later claim that the attack had been committed as a rite of passage into becoming assistants to the Slender Man himself. Now, because of all this history that had been written about the Slender Man, there was part of it, there was a rumour actually brought about that if you murdered in the name of Slender Man, he would come and collect you, and you would then become one of his assistants sort of thing, helping to look after these kids in this place where he takes them to. What is interesting to note about these two is that basically at the time it happened, they were both declared mentally unstable and unfit to stand trial.
Oh, they were. I saw their interviews, Brett. You watch their interviews. They are not right.
The one girl, and this is funny and not funny at the same time, while she was in the mental hospital where they were keeping her, also claimed to be speaking to Lord Voldemort and one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yep.
Okay. Now, she was originally declared as fit to stand trial, as was the other one. I think they came to the conclusion in the mental hospital that they were putting it all on to try and appear, you know, like they were mentally unstable when they weren't. They both got between them 85 years in prison for the attempt. Luckily, the girl they stabbed 19 times did survive the attack, but it was all laid firmly at the feet of Slender Man and all this creepypasta myth stuff that was surrounding him. Okay, so we come on to the pros and cons. I can actually think of absolutely zero pros to support that the Slender Man is actually real. Okay, and the reason is the very first con. The beginnings can easily be traced back to an internet forum. You know, we all know it is. You can trace it back to 2009 when Slender Man was created. Interestingly enough, he was actually created exactly 3 months after Zozo the Demon was on a similar forum. So Zozo the Demon and Slender Man were both created on internet forums only 3 months apart in 2009. Another con is his entire back history is created by fans of creepypasta, you know, like horror stories and stuff like that. The other con to the Slender Man is that severe crimes were committed as a result of the hysteria created by the Slender Man canon. Okay, so that's what I'll put up on Slender Man. Hang on, let me get my cursor back over here so I can check that. Come to my cursor, so it's weird using two screens. Right, so with this one, being that Scott was last, we'll start first with Scott. So what are your opinions on Slender Man, Scott? Paranormal being or total fiction?
My opinion is total fiction. Unfortunately, I think it's one of these cases where a character's been created, you know, whether it's in film or, you know, a book or something, and you get these individuals, whether they're, you know, they're mentally unstable or whatever, you get these individuals that get into the head that these characters are real. As you says about Voldemort, I've heard it happening. People believing Jason Voorhees was real. You know, Lord of the Rings. You know, I've read stories to believe that's really true. And I think there's a case of two young girls who have, for whatever reason, got in their head that this guy is real, and they need to do this to be accepted by him. So it's just, to me, it's just pure fiction.
Do you think there should start to be some kind of regulation towards these sites where they're creating this kind of stuff? You know, where they're feeding into mass hysteria and causing things like near fatal stabbings? Or is it just one of them things we've got no way of controlling?
I think it's one of these things that we've got no way of controlling. I mean, you know, film-wise, you've got, you know, like ages 12, 13, you know, 18. You know, they put certificates on films.
Yeah. Your sound's gone, Scott. You've muted yourself, Scott.
Probably. It does all the time.
Try and unmute yourself. You're definitely muted because you got the mute symbol up. That's it, now it's off. Try again now.
Right, am I back?
Yeah, you're back, yeah.
I don't know what happened there, sorry. I think it's something that you can't control. The same as, you know, like, you can't control who's going to see it, who's going to read it. It's the same as they have these movies for 18 and over. But you know yourself, you know, under 18s always get to see them. So I don't think there is a way. It'd be great if there was, but I don't think, you know, feasibly there is anyway.
Yeah. Jackie says there is nothing wrong with a fictional character. Look at DC Comic World and Marvel. Totally agree, Jackie.
Yeah.
Jackie, you know, Superman, Spider-Man, you know, I'm a big Marvel fan myself. Yeah. It's just sometimes, you know, it always tends to be with darker characters, you know, and horror characters that people tend to believe.
Yeah. See, the problem with the Slender Man is the actual canon that they created was extremely dark. Even, you know, it focused on child abduction and murder and stuff like that. And as you know, there are people out there who believe everything they see and hear. You know, there's channels on YouTube that come up with some right stuff and people swallow it up line and sinker. You know, so we know, and that's just mild paranormal stuff. When you're getting into the realms of, you know, claiming these characters are real and abducting kids and doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things, that for me is when it gets dangerous. You know, but what can we do about it, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I watch a lot of crime documentaries and American crime documentaries as well. Yeah. And there's quite a few I watched, and it's like teenagers going out and kidnapping somebody and, you know, sacrificing them or shooting them. And when they get caught, they get interrogated, and they say it's because we watched, they've done it in such and such a film. So we wanted to.
Yeah. Don't you think it's the responsibility of whoever runs these creepypasta channels to at least try and push the fact that what they're doing is fictional?
They should have some kind of, you know, some kind of warning, disclaimer saying this is just fictional for entertainment, you know, none of this is real, or, you know, something they should have ideally. But then the other side of that is people might read it, but they won't read it. You know, they'll read it, but they won't take it in. You know, and they'll still carry on. It's a kind of, unfortunately, people are like that.
Well, I like to watch things on crime and how children in particular commit murder, and I'll watch it from start to finish, and I'll watch their interviews, and I'll watch what happens afterwards. And I'm going to tell you, I do not think they believed in Slender Man. I think that attack was jealousy and rage 19 times.
Yeah.
And when they got interviewed, she happily stood there and said, well, yeah, like, you know, we murdered her. Yeah. I mean, no. I think
it was a close thing. I believe the one was convicted of first-degree attempted murder, and the other one was convicted of second-degree attempted murder.
They thought she was dead. They didn't know she'd survived. And the one that was a so-called best friend all that time, because she'd been a best friend since she was little kids. Well, you know, we've murdered her.
Yeah.
And no, I think they laid it on that story because they had nothing else to pinpoint it on. So they took that fictional story, they added it into the fact that they tried to murder this poor girl, and it were rage and it were jealousy and just no.
Yeah.
And he's not real.
This is what worries me sometimes with my channel, because some of the things I discuss can be quite gory, and I think I hope there's no kids out there watching this and thinking it's real, and that is why I always say this is my opinion. This is not necessarily what is actually the truth.
It's for entertainment purposes only.
You have got to make that distinction that whatever you're saying is not gospel.
But Brett, I can honestly say, for someone to do something like that, I'm sorry, their issues are well before any Slender Man came along.
Yeah.
And if you watch the documentary and go back to when she was younger, she showed signs then. Very disturbing signs all the way through life.
I have actually seen the interviews of them.
I think, they loved all this gore and they loved watching that stuff. But when it came down to it, it was just jealousy, rage, and they wanted to. And then they pinpointed it on the story, thinking they could plead insanity by doing that, and it didn't work. And no, I do not believe in Slender Man, although I do think it's quite hilarious, and the film is absolutely boring. But
I've never watched it.
Don't bother.
Andy's put reminds me of the Sun headline, MDMA made me tear off my scrotum. If people think they can use something as an excuse for their behaviour, then they will. Totally agree, Andy.
Right, Andy. Yeah, it's exactly that. Honestly, she had these girls had issues well before they looked at Slender Man.
Yeah. Okay, Sam.
Yeah, no.
Tell us about your love of Slender Man.
I think it's nonsense.
Right. Why?
Absolute nonsense. There's a difference between Slender Man and a Slender Man. And I think people say that they see figures of a Slender Man.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's the Slender Man. The Slender Man was created. Well, the Slender Man was created as a fictional character.
Yeah.
Why would it be real?
Exactly. Exactly. But there are many people out there who actually believe that this guy is actually a genuine paranormal entity.
Well, in the paranormal community, a lot of people are embarrassed to even mention them.
Yeah. And there's others who quite happily use him.
Yeah, I mean, it is that ridiculous that they're actually embarrassed to actually say anything about them.
Yeah. Totally agree. Sarah?
I think it's total guff, basically.
Is that a Scottish term? Guff.
Guff. Just means total rubbish.
Right, okay.
As for the girls, I think that they done something absolutely horrendous and pinned it on the kind of... What's the word for it? The thing that was popular at the time.
Yeah. So he was the current fad.
Yeah.
If it wasn't him, it would have been whatever
else were there at that time. I get you.
Yeah. See, what didn't help with the Slender Man was he went viral extremely quickly.
Yeah,
and he spread across the internet very, very quickly. I remember when my son was younger, actually having the Slender Man game before I'd even actually heard of him. Yeah. And he was creeping up on you as you were walking around this house sort of woods, and you had to stop him getting to you sort of thing. And I then realised at the time that he was actually based on this fictional paranormal character.
Right, work that out then, Brett. Think of the money they made off Slender Man.
Yeah, exactly.
The game was quite creepy, to be fair.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it were. Joshua, my eldest, he used to make me sit with him while he played it because he was too scared on his own.
My son showed it me the one day, and I thought, Jesus Christ, this is a bit like psychological torture for some people. Some people ain't going to cope with this.
I didn't very well.
Pat says it's what kids do when they do something really bad. Blame it on something else. Totally agree with you, Pat.
What have I done?
Totally agree with you.
I think everybody's guilty of that. Kids, when they were kids at some point or another, blame it on something else or somebody else or whatever.
Yeah.
Right,
Right, so I think we're going to take it that again, that's 5-0, that Slender Man is a complete and utter pile of shite. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Now, this one's quite an interesting one because this is one that people don't cover very often. And we are going to do... Wait for it to stop flashing. Stop flashing. We're going to have epilepsy if you don't stop flashing. Right, Spring-Heel Jack. Why have I actually popped that up? Sorry, I've just caught that. Right, Spring-Heel Jack first came to light in London in February of 1837. Now, this is a really interesting one. I do like Spring-Heel Jack. The first cases of Jack were extremely bizarre. Early accounts told of knocked doors answered by unsuspecting women, only to have a figure suddenly attack and rip at their clothes with talon-like claws. Following these attacks, the assailant would spring away with incredible acrobatic skill. Two of the most famous attacks occurred in 1838. The first report was made by Jane Alsop, I presume that is, on the 19th of February 1838. Jane claimed that a man began knocking on the door claiming to be a police officer and asked her to bring a light, claiming, "We have caught Spring-Heel Jack here in the lane." Jane brought out a candle and handed it to the heavily cloaked man. As soon as she handed him the candle, Jane claimed he threw off the cloak and presented to her a most hideous and frightful appearance. Now, that, I presume, is a very Victorian thing to say. Jane Alsop claimed the man began this is where it gets interesting. Jane Alsop claimed the man began vomiting blue and white flames while staring at her with eyes like red balls of fire. She described her attacker as wearing a very large helmet and that he was clothed in tight-fitting garments that looked to her very much like white-coloured oilskin. She then went on to claim that he grabbed her without saying a word and began to rip at her gown with claws that were made of something of a metallic substance, right? So she was claiming these claws were metallic. She began to scream and managed to escape towards the house, but her attacker caught up with her on the steps of the house. He then began to claw at her neck and arms until she was rescued by her sister, at which point Jack fled, right? On the 28th of February, only 9 days after the attack on Jane Alsop, Jack struck again. Lucy Scales, an 18-year-old girl, and her sister were returning from a visit to their brother, who lived in Limehouse. Now, I presume that's Limehouse in London. In her report to the police, Miss Scales stated that as she and her sister were approaching Green Dragon Alley, and that's Green Dragon Alley, not Diagon Alley, they noticed a person standing in the alleyway itself. As Lucy, who was walking slightly in front of her sister, reached the figure, it suddenly spurted blue flames directly into her face. Miss Scales fell to the floor in alarm and began to have seizures, which lasted several hours. Hearing his sister's screams, Lucy's brother rushed to the scene and found Lucy being supported in the arms of her sister. Her sister later described the attacker as tall and slim, of gentlemanly appearance, heavily cloaked and carrying a lamp. She then went on to say he made no attempt to put hands on them, which I presume again is another Victorian phrase, but calmly walked away after the attack. In 1843, a wave of Spring-Heel Jack reports began to appear across the country, where one report from Northamptonshire described him as the very image of the devil himself, with horns and eyes of flame. A rash of reports of attacks on coach drivers of mail coaches was also reported in East Anglia around the same time. In 1872, the News of the World, such a great paper not, reported that Peckham was in a state of emotion where Jack was linked to the Peckham ghost, and in April and May of 1873, Jack was once again linked to the park ghost of Sheffield, believe it or not, Claire.
Wow.
In, of all publications, the Illustrated Police News. So that was an official police publication. He was actually linked to the crime. In August of 1877 came one of the more notable reports, where Jack was once again reported at Aldershot Barracks. A soldier claims whilst on guard duty at the barracks that he was approached by a figure who repeatedly slapped him round the face for some really odd reason. The guard shot at the man to no effect, and the figure fled the scene with astonishing bones. Now, that was the soldier's claim. he claimed that this man actually bounced away from the scene. He basically jumped away. That's what this guy was claiming. There are many more reports of Spring-Heel Jack where the victims have claimed to have been seized by a figure who then leapt over walls or over roofs of houses, with the unfortunate victim still tucked under his arm. Now, there are many old illustrations of this with Spring-Heel Jack. Jack, believe it or not, has also been linked to the famous devil footprints that were discovered in Devon in February of 1855. Now, I don't know how many of you know that story, but basically one February there was heavy snowfall all over Devon, and these footprints ran for 185 miles. Now, they were cloven footprints, and what was really interesting about them was they not only weaved around the ground, they went up the side of buildings and over roofs. So it looked like whatever was running had actually literally run up the side of houses and over the roofs. The last reporting of Spring-Heel Jack was said to have occurred in Liverpool as recently as 1904, believe it or not. That was the last official incident that was actually linked to this Spring-Heel Jack. Right, pros and cons. The pros, there were many reports. There were many reports all through the 1800s. A lot of them were professional witnesses. A lot of them were reported to the police, as in the case of Lucy and Jane. Both of them were reported to police. They were extremely well documented. And the other thing in support of Spring-Heel Jack is that all these reports are surprisingly consistent when it comes to his description. Okay? The cons. Some reports could have been a normal sex attacker, because when they first started, they were mainly on women, and they always started with him trying to rip their clothes off. Okay? Because it went over such a long period of time, nearly 100 years, there is also the excuse that there were possible copycats. People were doing this, copying and playing, under the guise of being Spring-Heel Jack. The other thing, in the case of things like when all the coach drivers of the male coaches were being attacked, it could have been being used to cover normal crimes. They could have been normal criminals just disguising themselves as this Spring-Heel Jack to cause a bit more fear and scare off anybody from interrupting them. The other thing I put down as a con is mass hysteria. Because it got so popular in Victorian London, it could quite easily have been a case of, mass hysteria, with everybody joining in the what's it. So, right, with that one, we'll start with Sarah. So what is your opinion on Spring-Heel Jack? A very interesting character.
He is a very interesting character. That's the first I'd heard of him as such.
Mm-hmm.
I'd read something ages ago that there was that Jack the Ripper actually came off the back of Spring-Heel Jack.
Spring-Heel Jack, yeah.
That's where he got the name. But other than that, that was the first I'd heard the story, so I don't know. I think it's possible that it could be someone killing people and dressing up, and the story's just kind of...
Yeah, the thing is, he never actually killed anybody. Spring-Heel Jack, he did attack people, and he was supposedly equipped with metal claws and stuff, but he used to use it to slash up the clothes more so than to kill them.
An acrobatic Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah, but the thing that's interesting about him is the leaping, because apparently he could leap over buildings. He was jumping over the roofs of buildings. This was why he was called Spring-Heel Jack. Now, and the thing that one description, he was wearing an helmet and a tight-fitting white clothes, is really interesting to me, because that sounds like astronaut-y type thing to me. And that could explain the flame spitting and the glowing eyes and stuff. But, it is very interesting. But for somebody who's heard the story for the first time, like Sarah has, it's probably a very interesting story to hear, Sarah, because he's a very, very interesting character, Spring-Heel Jack. Because he was described as being like a man, but he actually had these abilities to spit fire and and the glowing eyes. Now, when she was actually interviewed, when she described him with the helmet on, she actually claimed that the flames came out of his mouth. They weren't as part of an apparatus of the helmet. She did actually claim that she saw the flames come out of his mouth, as did Lucy. Lucy also claimed that the flames sprouted from his mouth. So, interesting one.
Too much curry.
I believe that he was a real character. Now, just going by the description and what he could do, it might sound ludicrous, but I think he could be some kind of circus performer.
Yeah, then that was actually, believe it or not, that was actually one of the theories that we put forward. Was that he, was he like a circus performer who knew how to, a fire eater and an acrobat? That is one of the things. What was interesting though was he basically jumped onto roofs, so he would have to have had some kind of device. I would have thought fitted to his feet to give him some kind of leverage to jump out. I know houses weren't high in those days, but they were still high enough that you couldn't physically jump on one normally.
I think to me, he's some kind of circus performer. That explains the Spitfire and etc. And as to the widespread of the reports, I think it's people just trying to cover up their own crimes and blaming it.
Yeah, I do believe there was copycats. I think it's also interesting as well. For me, I definitely think the Jane Alsop attack was definitely a performer, because the fact he asked her to bring a candle out was interesting. He actually asked her to bring a naked flame out, and if he was some kind of fire eater, he could easily have had the alcohol already in his mouth, and literally when she went to get the candle, he could have put it in his mouth. Then when he took the candle, just spit at her over the top of the candle, and then it would form the flame sort of thing. The only thing I can't work out is why the flames were blue. For me, it would have had to been some kind of spirit rather than because some spirits do burn blue.
I don't know, I don't know a lot about fire eaters and what have you, but maybe they use, could be some kind of chemical they used.
Well, copper also burns a bluey green as well. So if he'd used copper filings in the thing, it would then make the stuff go blue. But for me personally, I do think that at least a few of the cases were something like a circus performer. Some of the others I can't really explain as well, but that one I certainly do.
So that's my take on it.
Yeah. Claire?
Well, I ain't got a clue, you see, because it's the first I heard of Spring Hill Jack, and the only other time I've met good Spring Hill Jack was when I played Assassin's Creed and had to fight him. I don't think that counts. So, honestly,
you think it's interesting you played a computer game based on a so-called paranormal entity.
Yeah. Plus, it was set back in them days as well. Bear in mind. In this Assassin's Creed, yes, you played a brother and a sister, and you went back to that time.
Right.
And he was in that time. It was happening as you went back in time, and you had to fight him. Now, on there's one thing that were undeniable was the fact he could jump very high.
Yeah.
On the game, but honestly, I don't think I could give an opinion as such, other than I do not know. It's very interesting. I'd like to look into it more. I'm going to say there's some truth there because there's too much happening, too much going off for there not to be some truth. Yeah. Maybe even possibly someone wanting to gain some attention somehow and started this, and then it turned into a sex attacker and things got out.
Yeah.
And people copied. It could even be that.
Because what you've got to remember, in Victorian times, believe it or not, rape was a lot more prevalent than it is today. Because they could get away with it a lot easier. Exactly.
And if you're going to go looking like that, having a particular style, then you're going to get noticed by the media and such, and it's going to draw attention. And then people are going to copy. But I do think there's definite truth in there. I couldn't justify what it is, but it's very interesting. Yeah.
Sam?
I'm going to put a little bit of a twist on it. Now, I never heard of this character. I never heard of this case.
Yeah.
But it does, what you've just told me, matches an incident that happened. I think it was Delhi. Right. It was in a city in India. And I don't know what the time period was, but it was one summer when it was so hot, the people were sleeping outside and on the roofs.
Mm-hmm.
And this character with metal claws had attacked a number of people. It caused a hysteria in the city.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's
So
interesting.
don't know what the time period was, but there's links similar to that. You know, some thought it was a monkey that had claws attached to it. It was, you know,
Right.
because the fact that
It was scaling buildings and getting on roofs.
Yeah.
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 So
So
what is your opinion of Jack of Spring-Heeled Jack himself? How do you think he did it, Sam? Do you think there could have been possible paranormal things and mixed in with more everyday occurrences? See, I'm of the opinion it was multiple. All these cases were performed by different people. Because the one of how he was addressed in the oilskin, I found really interesting with the large helmet. That was not your typical Victorian dress. You know, it was all waistcoats and trousers and the long back jackets, wasn't it? But she claimed he was dressed in and apparently it was a material she wasn't familiar with. She just said it looked like oilskin. So was it an asbestos suit type thing that they were? Because I don't know, you know, how far back asbestos type materials go. Whether I presume they had them in Victorian times.
See, that would maybe tie in with the, you know, circus performer.
Mm-hmm.
If it's some kind of strange material, and they wore that during their act to stop going in fire.
Yeah.
You know, just an idea.
Mm-hmm. Because there was a lot of circus performers in London in Victorian times. You know, the circus was very popular.
Yeah.
Very, very popular. Right, we'll vote on this one. For me, I'm sitting on the fence with this one because I think a lot of it has got natural explanations, but there is a few bits in there that, you know, I can't really explain away, like jumping over roofs. For me, that's just a little bit of a stretch too far for somebody to do it, you know, just from standing still. So I'm gonna sit on the fence on this one. Sam?
I was about to do the same thing.
Well, that's fine. So you're classed as sitting on the fence?
Yeah.
Sarah?
I'm 50-50.
Yeah. Scott?
I'm on the fence simply because of the jumping over the roof.
Yeah, that's the only thing that gets me.
I don't get that bit.
I'm the same. I'm exactly the same.
See, I'm with Scott on the thing that I think a lot of it was somebody who knew how to do acrobatics and fire eating. But there are also elements. The other elements that are really interesting was the later reports where the soldier shot at him. There was also another occurrence of that in another village where he was bouncing around a field and he was actually shot at by multiple villagers and they hit him and it didn't affect him. So there's something definitely strange there in some of the stories.
Yeah, you know, like the pogo sticks. Could it not be something like that attached? I mean, if he's a really good acrobat and he gets something that can make him leap,
he would have had to have fairly large springs on his feet, and even then, I don't know whether they'd have given him the lift to get him high enough to get on a roof. Yeah, that is what I thought. So I think with this one, we're going to put it down to 5 on the fences.
I'll just tell you something. You get these, I don't know what they're called, but you see them on YouTube, these guys that jump about buildings and stuff. And
yeah.
You call them. You know,
I know what you're on about. They somersault over walls and over fences and all kinds of things. You know, but normally they do have to bounce from wall to wall or something to get the eye.
Yeah, it is.
He was apparently leaping from the street, right, not only onto roofs but completely over roofs. He was literally jumping over buildings.
Bray, I do it all the time on my broomstick. What are you on about, man?
Yeah, I know. So we'll put Spring-Heeled Jack down to 5 on the fences.
Yes.
5 on the fence.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one. This is going to be Claire's favourite.
Yes. Woo!
Right, here we are with Dogman, the canine cryptid. Right. The first modern recorded Dogman encounter, believe it or not, occurred in Wexford County, Michigan in 1887. So it goes back quite a way, when two lumberjacks reported encountering a creature in the woods that had the body of a man but a dog's head. In 1937 in Paris, Michigan, a man named Robert Fortney claims to have been attacked by a pack of 5 wild dogs. Whilst this report does not seem to be anything much out of the ordinary, his report does become more interesting when the report goes on to claim that one of the 5 dogs walked around on 2 legs. Okay, so that in itself is interesting. It is claimed that sightings of the Michigan Dogman follow a cycle of 10 years. Now, this is really interesting, mainly occurring in the 7th year of each decade.
Yep.
Okay. Dogmen are reported to be at least 7 feet tall, with either amber or blue eyes, the torso of a man, and a howl that sounds like a human scream. Although Dogman reports only became more popular in the late 20th century, which is true, there have been reports of the Michigan Dogman in the area of the Misty River of Michigan, in the lore of the local Adawa tribe, I think you pronounce that, for many centuries. So they have been known to the Native Americans for as long as they've been in the Michigan area. Probably the most famous Dogman reports is that of the Beast of Bray Road. The Beast of Bray Road has been reported many times, including by a former assistant district attorney of Walworth County. The beast is described as 7 foot tall, werewolf-like creature weighing between 400 and 700 pounds, roughly the size of a big bear, with a shaggy brown or grey coat. It is claimed that the beast exhibits a high degree of intelligence, which wouldn't count towards a bear. The beast is often sighted crossing the roads in many places and has also been witnessed around homes and property. Right. Now, the pros and cons. The pros with this I've put, and these are one of the ones I could think of. Again, there's been many reports of the Beast of Bray Road and other areas of Michigan. There have also been reports in West Virginia, where there is another town that is very famous for werewolves. There have been professional witnesses, like the assistant district attorney.
Policeman.
There's been many police reports regarding these Dogman creatures. They are well documented, and again, the consistent descriptions, including height, approximate weight, coat, and eye colour of the Dogman, tend to be almost identical in every single report that is given. The cons: there is very little physical evidence collected, like fur or anything like that. Recordings of the howls can easily be faked, which they can. Could easily be a mistaken identity, as bears live in the area. So people who said they've seen this big brown figure rear up on the back legs could be seeing a bear. Although it is often reported on, near or crossing Bray Road, one has never been hit and killed by a vehicle. Now, I've put there hit and killed because I am aware of at least one report where the Beast of Bray Road was actually struck by a vehicle, but it ran off and no trace of it was ever discovered. So that is basically your skeletal description of Dogmen. So we'll start with Sam. What is your opinion on Dogmen, Sam?
I'm not fully convinced.
Right.
It's a difficult one because, you know, up until recently, I described Bigfoot as a big smelly monkey.
Yeah.
And turns out there's been loads of sightings in Ireland.
Yeah.
But then again, is it misidentification?
Andy says werewolves.
I know, that's what I'm doing. Werewolves' lives matter, man.
But, you know, you're saying misidentification in Ireland, Sam. What would be in Ireland that people would actually mistake a 7-foot dog walking on 2 legs for? Honestly.
Damn you.
You know, it's understandable in places like America because they've got bears and they've got big bears, you know. But Ireland ain't really famous for its bear population, is it?
No, we got deers.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it.
You know, this is why, because we have had reports over here in England as well of these supposed dogmen. There's a very famous one up in Flamborough in Yorkshire where that cryptid is described as a giant hyena-like thing, and that apparently gets up on its back legs as well and runs on two legs. So I know we've got them over here in East Yorkshire. That's at least one I know too.
Yeah, they're about 5 foot, aren't they, over here? They're said to be about between 5 foot and 6 at most, and they're quite scrawny.
That one in Flamborough is the size of a small pony when it's on its 4 legs. So standing up, it's going to be 7-8 feet.
Budge that, I'm gone.
You know, so and there's nothing I can think of in the UK that would actually be mistaken for a big shaggy dog on 2 legs that's 7 feet tall. Because even your biggest stags, I highly doubt if they reared up on their back legs would reach an height of 7 feet.
Well, then you think it were a Wendigo with antlers.
Yeah, exactly.
So Wendigo.
Wendigos.
Mm-hmm. She's a Wendigo, by the way.
Well, the Native Americans call them the Neshoba cheetahs.
Yeah, I know it's an unpronounceable word. That's why they don't put it in.
They believe the skinwalkers.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the Bigfoot theory, the theory that was put out recently by some of yourselves about them possibly being from the elemental side. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm going to put that into that box, possibly.
Yeah. That's where I'll put them, Sam, because, you know, for places over here, for things like that to be appearing, they've either got to be something of an elemental nature or they are coming through from other dimensions, sort of thing.
See, Sam, if you saw something like that, I'd believe it completely because I trust you. So I know that Sam's not one that's going to say it, but not like if she says it, she's seen it. So, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't see anything like that, no.
Yeah.
No.
To be honest, I don't know a lot about it.
Right.
The whole subject, but what I'd say is there's also something, but you know, one of the coins there was could be mistaken for a bear, but as you say, there's a police officer and a district attorney.
Yeah.
These people live in that area, so they know what a bear looks like.
Yeah. And most people in that area would know what a bear looked like. They would, you know, most people would have encountered bears at some point or another.
So,
bear in mind, the one on Bray Road has never ever been known to attack humans ever.
No, this is another thing. But it's also been known to exhibit extremely high intelligence. You know, like human intelligence. This thing has.
You said bear in mind.
I'm leaving Claire till last because Claire's going to tell us another story about another one. Right, Sarah.
I don't know much about the whole cryptids and stuff like that, so whether it's real or not, I have no clue.
Right, so what personal feelings when you heard that story, what did you think?
I don't know. It is possible, but I don't think it's some mad beast that roams about.
Yeah, I personally do not believe they are people who turn into dogs. Me personally.
No.
I don't believe they're people who turn into dogs. I believe they are a species of their own, like Bigfoot type thing, like Sam's big smelly monkeys. I do believe that they're basically Sam's face. You know, I do believe if they are real, they are a species of their own. Right, Claire, your opinion on Dogman, and then you can tell us all about what is it? Land between.
We're going to go into the land between the lakes because it's a very interesting story. Now, bear in mind the story as well is documented. There is police reports, the FBI, the lot were involved in this.
Yeah.
Still unsolved to today.
Yeah. This is probably the most famous Dogman case of them all, isn't it?
But I will say that there's some disturbing information. So if you don't like to hear things like that, then don't listen to it. I'll go into the story first, and then I'll just give you my quick opinion on them, really, because it is what it is. So we're looking at Kentucky, and it's called The Land Between the Lakes. Now, I do believe, Brett, it actually does lead on to, which is interesting. You know the Road of Tears, where all the murders?
Yeah.
I believe it leads on to there.
Right, okay.
Now, this is like a camping area for families.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an RV camped out, and one of the park rangers had a call come in that there was some strange sounds coming from the area to go check it out.
Right, so who called the rangers? Somebody in the area?
Just the park ranger. I haven't put names in. I didn't think it was.
No, I mean,
fair.
Who called the park rangers? Was it
It just
park
said
ranger or a member of the public?
A member of the public going past the area heard it, you know, and it was in a car though. So, I mean, you know, and it said that he heard him, and then he called the park ranger in to go and have a look because he knew there were a family staying in an RV. So, you know, because it weren't overpopulated. So if someone's staying in that area, they're going to know that someone's in the area.
Yeah.
Now, when he's gotten to the RV, that he noticed that the screen door was all smashed, like, you know, smashed in. So it was open.
Yeah.
There was no blood, what he could see on the outside. Now, we couldn't go in until the sheriff came.
Right.
Because obviously straight away there's something wrong. If that screen door's smashed in, there's something not quite right.
Yeah.
As you go in, apparently there were a pool of blood. The first thing they saw was a pool of blood and a severed arm.
Right.
In this RV should have been 2 adults and 2 children. The male adult was mutilated and was trying to get his shotgun activated, you know, put his bullets in to shoot. The female was on the bed. She'd been mutilated and eaten. The young male child was in the bathroom. He'd been chopped into 3 pieces, I believe, and eaten.
Right.
So they're thinking now animal. There's an animal. There was a little girl, 5-year-old. They could not locate the little girl. So now they're thinking deranged sex offender, as you would, you know. And they found, I believe it was 4 pieces of a top, her pajama Cinderella top. And they couldn't locate her. So as they started looking around, you know, and everything.
Yeah. Go on, carry on.
I think what it says is they had to search the area as well.
Right.
Now there's no tracks, there was no there was no animal tracks, there was no footprints, there was nothing that would suggest that they could see someone enter. Yeah. They've gone, apparently it says they've gone up a path, and unfortunately she's 5-year-old.
Sounds lost it, Claire.
Yeah, but this little girl was 5.
No,
and she was
laughing at your story, I was laughing at James's comments.
I know. I didn't read it. I'm not going to read it because if I read it, I'll never stop laughing. So I just kind of ignored it.
Go on, carry on.
They found her 20 foot up a tree, this little girl. And her arm had been gnawed off. Now, bear in mind, these investigators had never seen anything like this. This traumatized them for the rest of their lives. The thing with the little girl is as well, when they did an autopsy, she's 5-year-old and died of heart failure. And the only thing they could put a 5-year-old being up that tree like that, 20 foot, dying of heart failure would be out of fear.
Yeah.
As the investigation continued, no fingerprints were ever found. No animal tracks, there was no sign of anything but that family. The blood, all the blood was tested, it belonged to the family, apart from the little girl's, which was only up the tree.
Right. Now,
it was official and the FBI did come in and they still found absolutely nothing, no evidence of anything other the mattress in which there was no evidence. It was other than the family being there. They thought it were a big cat at first, but realised that there's no tracks. It couldn't be a big cat to take out. Surely he'd have got his shotgun, you know. He couldn't even get his bullets in his shotgun before he were dead. You know, his head had been took clean off. Yeah. Now, the mattress where the adult female had been found, they looked at that mattress and apparently it had deep slashes in it. 3 were very deep and 1 was not so deep, but they all went horizontally in different ways, like a ferocious animal would, you know, when it's...
Yeah, when it's slashing.
Right. And that actually was the same as what the body state was in.
Yeah.
So it was like it went through the body into the mattress sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really there's a lot more to it. You can actually go and look at the story, and it gives you the names, and it even gives you the police officers' rank numbers.
Yeah.
You know, it gives you what times and everything. Yeah. The only other interesting thing to that story is that I think it was a few years later, they found 2 executed teenagers, 2 girls, in the same area.
Right.
The thing is with the story, was it just a very unusual cannibalistic murderer? Because it's possible. It really is. But it really is.
Yeah.
Or was it the beast of LBL? Now, the Native Americans do say it was the skinwalker of LBL.
Right.
So that is the other story related to Dogman.
See, I believe what's really interesting about that is a lot of skinwalker reports, they never find any tracks. Now, some of these skinwalkers are reported up to 12 feet in height. You know, so that's going to be a really heavy, whatever it is. It's going to sink into the ground a little bit and leave tracks. But even,
I'm going to kill you.
Who?
Leave your message.
You know, but even in these skinwalker reports where they've been reported up to 12 feet tall, they very rarely get any form of tracks from them.
No, there was no DNA found either of the families, which I found very interesting.
Yeah, because you know, even if it had been an upper killer wearing claws, they should have found metal fragments in the wounds, or they should have found fragments of the claws. And plus, a wild animal wouldn't hide its tracks after it had been there anyway. Exactly. And 2, normally, as soon as they kill something, they run off with it. They don't sit there and massacre everything in the area. They normally kill what they want and off they go, sort of thing. So again, and why when the first family member was attacked in the others?
That's what they couldn't understand.
You know, why were they lying in beds and stuff like that? You know, they weren't aware of what was going on.
That's what's been in the police report all this time. You know, like why this and why they've got no answers, none. Yeah. And there hasn't been another attack like that as far as I'm aware. Anyway, if they cover it, I mean, I don't know, but. That's why it interests me, that story, because there's some elements in there that I kind of would like, you know, I think, well, that's got to be, there's something to it, you know, there's definitely something to it. Now,
Steve brought an interesting point up here, and I'm going to ask you in a minute. Steve has put, wouldn't they be able to tell what animal, if it was from bite marks, if it was from our dimension? Were there actually any bite marks, or was it all slash marks?
No, that's the thing, right? The bodies were so mutilated, Brett, that these were clean cuts. The head was taken clean off like a sword would.
Right.
That's odd.
Yeah.
But the chew marks, they were so gnawed to a point of unrecognizable, like it was unrecognizably gnawed.
They were mangled.
Yeah. But when
as even an animal, they should have found something.
Yeah, well, this is it. That's what makes it really bizarre. You know, and I know it's not in UK, but
and the fact that there's no sign that any of the family tried to flee, they were all still in the RV and lying on beds and stuff like that. That makes it really odd.
Yes, it does.
You know, now, almost the Dogman like it was silent killings.
Yeah, well, this is why we see. At first, they thought your big hairy man, Sam. That's what they thought at first. You know,
they thought it was your monkey, Sam.
Yeah,
they thought it was Bigfoot.
They did at first, and then when they talked to the local Native Americans, they said, "Look, Bigfoot would probably throw stones at the RV to get rid of them, but that's a skinwalker. Neshoma Chica, that's a skinwalker."
To be honest with you, from a lot of the skinwalker reports I've read, it does sound there's very similar characteristics to the other skinwalker thing, like the lack of tracks and stuff like that. That's
interesting, Brett, because I've never looked into them.
That is very common in skinwalker reports, that there's no tracks or anything left. They literally disappear, sort of thing, with no trace.
Interesting.
So there you go, folks. I'm going to look that up after, Claire. I'm going to look
because it goes into very, very so much more detail, Brett. You'll love it. So much more detail,
Right. So,
but if there is Dogmen, I believe they're animals anyway, not.
Yeah.
I believe that some could be possibly elemental, and I'd probably put them more in that box. But I don't believe that the werewolves. I don't believe that man turns into wolf. No.
Yeah. Right. So we'll take a vote on it. I am going to say yes. I do believe they fall into the same box as Bigfoot. Sam?
Yeah.
And you're going to go to Iceland and get you some chicken drumsticks and stuff later?
I didn't actually see that episode.
No, me.
I might watch it for shits and giggles.
Claire?
Yeah, I believe there's truth to the Dogman. I believe it's elemental more than anything, if all.
Scott?
I don't know much of it, but going by what I've heard more of it, I would say there is definitely something. Yeah.
Sarah?
I think there's definitely something, but what it was that actually committed the murders, I don't know. So
we've got 4 yeses and 1 possibly. Not bad for Dogman. I thought
not bad at all.
I thought that was the one that was going to cause the most controversy. Right, we're going to get on to the final one of the night.
Well,
and
usually it does, Brett. Yeah. But when you work like this and you look at it from a proper point of view, it doesn't, you know.
Yeah, right. We're going to go on to the final beast that everybody in here should at least have heard of. Okay, so we'll call it up. Look who we've got as the final one. Mothman, the Virginian flyer. Everybody should have heard of Mothman. Right, the summary. Stop giggling. The Mothman occurred in Point Pleasant in West Virginia. Now, what is really interesting, that I find really odd, is a lot of these so-called, like beasts of the paranormal seem to occur in West Virginia, which I find really odd. Right, the initial report. On November the 15th, 1966, 2 couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry, and Steve and Mary Mallet of Point Pleasant, reported to police that they had witnessed a strange creature captured in the headlights of their car. They claimed that they had first seen the creature on the ground and in an area of Point Pleasant known as the TNT area, a former World War II munitions factory. And there's dome-shaped bunkers there that they used to store the TNT in. Okay? They went on to say that when the headlights of the car illuminated the being, its eyes had glowed a luminous red. In panic, the 2 couples fled the area, chased by the being as it flew on 10-foot wings above the car. They would later claim that the car had been pushed to over 70 miles an hour, but the creature had easily kept pace with the speeding vehicle. Over the next few days, and there's a paper ready to read. Over the next few days, more people would come forward to claim they had witnessed the beast, including a man named Neil Partridge, who said he had witnessed the beast in a nearby field. Upon shining his torchlight directly at the creature, he claimed its eyes had lit up like bicycle reflectors. Oh, this is the bit that makes me laugh. Partridge also blamed the Mothman for a buzzing emitted from his TV and also for the disappearance of his German Shepherd dog. During this time, the Mothman was also reported by 2 volunteer firefighters who claimed to have witnessed a large bird with red eyes. On December the 15th, 1967, the legend of the Mothman took a sinister turn. In the middle of the rush hour and packed with cars, the Silver Bridge at Point Pleasant collapsed into the Ohio River. 46 men, women and children lost their lives to what engineers would later describe as structural failure of the bridge. Rumours and scaremongering plagued the town as many claimed to have witnessed the Mothman sitting on the bridge shortly before its collapse. It was these rumours and the legend of the Mothman itself that would lead to the publication of the Mothman Prophecies by John Keel in 1975, and it was later adapted into a film of the same name in 2002. Now, this is the sentence that, don't anybody laugh because I struggle every time I read this. The local sheriff always maintained that people were witnessing a large heron, known locally as a shite poke. And that is exactly what it's called, a shite poke, I kid you not. And Dr. Robert Smith, a wildlife biologist at West Virginia University, also put forward a similar explanation. Dr. Smith believed that people were seeing a sandhill crane that had drifted off its migratory path, known to grow nearly as tall as a man, with 7-foot wingspan and red circles around the eyes. If local opinion is to be believed, there are hundreds of eyewitness accounts of the Mothman, but many refuse to come forward because of the ridicule they will be forced to endure. Another important thing to note is many local residents of Point Pleasant claim that the Mothman is actually a species of giant bird and not the beast that is described in its popular form. Either way, it must be noted that Point Pleasant has greatly benefited financially since the introduction of the annual Mothman Festival that was started in 2002 with the launch of the film. Right, now the pros are there are a massive amount of witnesses to the Mothman. There have also been professional witnesses with the local firemen. There are police reports and it is well documented. The cons, again, there is very little physical evidence. It could be a case of mass hysteria. It could be misidentification of natural species like the shite poke and the sandhill crane. There has also been a massive financial benefit to Point Pleasant, so it is in the interests of Point Pleasant to keep the Mothman alive. And there's also the fact, the willingness of residents to blame Mothman for disasters with a normal explanation. So that is pretty much a very bare bones description of the Mothman. Now, to me, I've got to be honest, I think it's total bullshit.
The Mothman just likes money.
Yeah, for one, I don't believe anything the size of a man with 10-foot wings would ever get off the ground. Then it is a giant man with butterfly wings. I do believe again, it's another one of these. I kid you not, it is called a shite poke. I didn't make that up. I wonder if it's shite poke, the German Shepherd. Thanks, James. I do believe it probably was either a shite poke or this sandhill crane that the professor from the university described. Now Sam's tittering. I'm going to ask her first what her opinion is. Is it a shite poke, Sam?
Did you know? Did you know that there's picture of that statue of Mothman?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that town that statue is in?
Point Pleasant.
Did you know that you can get? Did you know that you can get Mothman pizza, Mothman cupcakes, and all sorts of Mothman merchandise?
Yeah. Apparently, so I watched a documentary of it. A couple. What is Lee saying? Sorry, Brett. Like I said, the dog's barking. It's surprising it ain't mine barking. Don't worry about it. Apparently,
it's because he's in kitchen on floor pissing himself with laughter. I'll tell you.
The shite poke. The festival alone apparently nets them 7 million.
Yeah.
It pumps 7 million into just the festival weekend, and
exactly.
they promote the Mothman 52 weeks of the year. It's very much like Willow Creek with Bigfoot, but on an even grander scale. So come on then, Sam. What's your opinion of Mothman then?
I watched an episode of it on BuzzFeed Unsolved.
Mm-hmm.
I watched that, Sam.
Yeah, and it goes back to Shadows.
Yeah.
Where a bat or a massive bird can look way bigger than it is because of the shadow of the moon and stuff like that. Yeah. I think a lot of the stories were misidentified, and then they had to keep it up because they seen a money opportunity in it, possibly similar to the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Where
I believe that.
I mean,
I do.
Yeah. I mean, like they're it's they're making money from it. So why completely debunk it? Because it's lost revenue, So they're gonna every so often possibly come up with a fabricated story to keep the thing alive for financial gain,
Okay, right, Sarah. Do you believe Point Pleasant are basically keeping the sighting of a shite poke alive just to make money, or do you believe the Mothman is real?
Well, I had never actually heard of the Mothman until tonight.
You are kidding.
Honestly, I'd never heard of it.
Go on.
So, in my opinion, I think it was a bird. I'm not going to say the name of it.
The shite
that
poke.
had been seen.
Go on, tell me which bird you thought it was.
No. So I think it's a very large bird that had been seen, and they've just kind of spun the story to make financial gain out of it.
Yeah. James says every time he hears a dog bark, he's going to be thinking it's been shite poke now. Right, Scott? Do you think it was a shite poke?
I think it was maybe the initial sight was a city poke. Aye. And then it's just carried on for money. Simple as,
$7
million in one weekend.
Yeah, the Mothman is a multi-million-dollar investment for Point Pleasant.
Sure.
You're going to keep that dog running, $7 million.
Yeah. And that's just in the festival weekend, and they do this all year round. Obviously, they don't make as much the rest of the year, but they still get tourists there all the time.
It could have been a shitty to start with.
Yeah. I think people are having the shite taken out of them.
Yeah.
Even Sarah's smirking at that one. Claire?
Exactly the same. I don't believe there's a Mothman flying around. I believe that's all for money.
So what do you think it was then?
Shite poke.
So you believe it was a shite poke as well?
Yeah, shite poke. If anything, it will have been that. Or something else exaggerated, yeah.
Or the sandhill crane don't sound as exciting, does it, as the shite poke?
No, shite poke. Shite poke. Shite poke. Shite pokey.
Right, we'll take a vote then. I am voting for the shite poke. Sam?
I just think it's. I just think it's complete and utter fiction.
Yeah. So, what do you think? What do you think it was then?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
It was just misidentified, a large bird or something.
Say it.
Which bird do you think it was, Sam?
Say it.
You want me to say shite poke? I'm not gonna say it.
You just said it.
I know.
Sarah?
I'm for the shite poke theory.
Yeah. Scott?
Yeah, I'll go with poking the shite. Aye.
Then. It's 5-0.
Sounds like a Pokemon.
There's no such thing as the Mothman. It was actually a shite poke. Right, folks, that's the end of the actual Paranormal
I've just got visions.
Thank God, I knew we'd end on a funny one with that one. When I was writing it all down and doing the PowerPoint thing, I thought, I'm going to dread reading this bit out because I'm just going to burst out, I'm just going to get hysterical laughter and not be able to finish the rest of the story. So I tried to put it as far towards the end as I possibly could. So, yeah, that's that.
James.
Actually, a shite poke, man, or something like that. Yeah, Nicole, it was. I definitely believe it was the shite poke. Brett tells Sam that PX was shite poked in the ancient ramming. Right, we can pretty much talk about everything now. Right, you two, Scott and Sarah, you've had a busy week this week with everything.
I don't see it, PX.
Sarah or Scott, feel free to chip in at this point.
I never heard what you said.
I said you two have had a busy week this week with your streams, and I think you've got a few more to come, ain't you? So what you got coming up so people know what to look for?
So, Scott, shut up. Coming up, we have tomorrow night we've got Paranormal Chapel. Sunday night we've got a team on called Caledonia Paranormal.
Right.
Monday night we've got Through the Veil coming on to talk to us about our new channel she's starting.
Mm-hmm.
No. Monday night we get Through the Veil Paranormal and Paranormal Underworld coming on. They're joining up to start a new channel called Shaded Darkness.
Okay.
How do you feel tonight? Has Tuesday confirmed, Scott?
And then what have you got planned after that?
Being confirmed.
Next Wednesday, we're doing a live on Jack the Ripper, and we'll get a ripperologist from London.
Oh, that'll be good. I love Jack the Ripper.
Me too.
No, it's Tuesday.
This is Wednesday. I'll talk to you later about it. Trust me.
Right, okay.
And then we've got Patty Negri back on the 4th of November. She's agreed to come back on. So that's. We've got a team called Ghost Bitches as well from Australia.
Yeah, I know Ghost Bitches. They're a good channel.
Here they are.
I know a lot of people get shocked when they see the channel name, but Ghost Bitches are actually quite a good channel, believe it or not.
And we've obviously got our Halloween extravaganza, Spookfest event.
Yeah, well, we are hopefully teaming up with Claire and Lee to do our Halloween one. But we're waiting for the weather to settle down. So hopefully maybe this weekend coming, Claire, it might get to the point where we can get to where we want to go.
I hope so.
And start to film some of that, and then we'll be doing it again. Right on the Halloween, hopefully on the Halloween night itself. Yeah,
but if we can't, we could always film it for that night and then just, do
it as a premiere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I ain't gonna say where we're going yet because
they're gonna sacrifice me to the gods.
Yeah, we're gonna sacrifice Claire for Halloween.
That's all right. Usual Friday night. Well, we're hoping to get to Edinburgh on an investigation Halloween Friday, but obviously we need to wait till the 25th. I think it's up here to find out what's happening.
Yeah.
But failing us getting to Edinburgh, we're going to do an investigation in here because we set up the camera again in here last night.
Did you catch anything interesting?
One of the cat balls went off.
Oh, right.
And one of the wee ones toys get moved. You didn't catch the toy get moved on camera. The camera only ran for about 3 hours for some reason. It caught the cat ball, but one of the wee one's toys was sitting at one end of the couch. And when we got up this morning, it was at the other end of the couch. But unfortunately, the camera cut out. But we caught the cat ball on camera. So if we can't get to Edinburgh, we're going to do another investigation in here, which hopefully, that's kind of like 2 main investigations, and then last night we had that, and we've had a result every time.
Yeah. Well, see, because both me and Claire are pagan, and both study witchcraft, where we're going, I'm gonna set us. I'm hopefully gonna talk Claire into doing a nice little ritual with me.
I will do. Brett, guess what I found?
What?
I found a chopped up adoption certificate for my dad.
Oh, have you? Right, we'll talk about that later then when we,
Interesting.
You don't want to discuss it all over here. Right, Sam, just sticking the cigarette in your gob. I read yesterday that apparently Northern Ireland is imposing the worst UK COVID restrictions. So what have you got planned? Because you of all of us are probably going to be the most limited.
Well, what I started doing was I bought a Zoom H1 recorder, and I thought it was so versatile that I just started recording myself talking absolute nonsense and just putting it out there. Well, you know, paranormal topics.
Talking absolute nonsense.
But yeah, I just thought I would, you know, if something came into my head about the paranormal, I would talk about it for 15 or 20 minutes and stick it out there as a little kind of a, you know, something that you don't have to watch, but you can hear it while you're washing your dishes or whatever.
I thought you were going to say something else then. Oh God, I thought you were going to say something else then when you went washing your dishes.
Your mind's in the sewer. Jeez. He's gone. He's gone. He's gone. Fucking hell.
I thought there's no way Sam's just said that on a live stream.
You were saying, Sam.
Sorry, Sam, go on.
Yeah, I was just toying around with different ideas and that, and I'm doing paranormal ghost stories from Ireland as well. So I don't.
One you did. I really love that one.
Yeah, so
I've got some to watch. I'm behind.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be doing an investigation here, but I don't know what way to tackle this one because I did have something significant happen yesterday.
Right.
A piece of equipment, a boom box that I have that needs a physical switch to switch it on, came on yesterday morning, and it hadn't been on. It's connected to the computer that I have beside me here, and I hadn't turned it on since the night before. Now I tried putting the switch halfway across.
Yeah, and see if it slid one way or the other.
The thing was, it needs. You sort of need to have it fully off. It won't sit sort of halfway. And when it came on, I actually heard the click, and then it has the little. I don't know if you can.
Interesting.
You can hear it. You can hear that beep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happened, and it happened right while I was sitting here. Why didn't it happen while I was asleep? I just don't know. It was a weird one. Something that I cannot explain. So I don't know what way to handle that because I'm not going to line up a load of equipment and do a usual.
Yeah.
That's
an odd one to try and repeat again, isn't it?
Yeah, like what Scott says, if you're doing a paranormal investigation of your own house, you put a camera in your house overnight and that kind of thing, rather than line up a big load of pieces of equipment on your couch and hoping that it would happen within a couple of hours, the length of a video kind of thing.
That'd be me, Sam. I'll just line them up for you.
No, a proper investigation would take weeks, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
So what is everybody's feelings on investigating around? Because I've got no problems with doing it, but a lot of you talk to a lot of people and they go, "Oh, I don't want to do anything like that in my own house in case I attract something." So what's
it don't bother me.
What's everybody's opinion on that? I've got no problems with doing it.
No, we don't have any. I think it's interesting to know if there is something, or to try if there is something, you know, because you might get stuff happening in your house, might be these silly noises or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And you could be sitting there for weeks and weeks thinking, well, is there something? Is there no something? And you drive yourself nuts.
Yeah.
So the best way, do an investigation and
So,
what did you just call me? Yeah.
Yeah. You're the only one called Sam.
All right. My audio is getting mixed up here. If I put a camera in my house and I seen a spirit on that camera in the middle of the night, Do you know, it would be brilliant, but I would feel very, very uneasy about it at the same time. So, you know, it's do you really want to know? You know, it's very hard to know. We are paranormal investigators, but this is our safe place.
Yeah.
You know, people are saying to me, you're doing spirit box sessions almost every night. Of course, you're attracting spirits kind of thing. But that's not, you know, I'm in a brand new house and I'm having activity. The big question is what's causing it? Is it the items that I have? Is it the spirit box? Is it that I go to paranormal investigations and come back and bring energy with me? We may never know any of those kind of answers, you know.
See, the thing is as well that you got what people don't realise, you know, because they go, oh, I've got something happening in my house and it's a brand new house. One, they don't consider the fact of what the house is actually sitting on, which is the land. You know, you never know what the land's got tied to it. And two, a lot of things in modern houses are actually made from reclaimed building materials. So, you know, if you believe in the stone tape theory, which I do, although you're living in a new house, it may not necessarily be new materials that house has been built out of.
Yeah, well,
if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, you know, it's got brick on the outside, wood on the inside, plasterboard. You know, you know, we have to take those things into consideration, you know.
Yeah.
It's hard to know. And now, you know, when this house was built, it was built in a field.
Yeah.
But was there settlements there before?
Exactly.
You know, hundreds and hundreds of years back. We just don't know. We just don't know.
See, and this is why I always say to people when they say to me, you know, I live in a, you know, I've got something happening in my house, but my house is only 30 years old and I'm the only one who's ever lived in it. And I always say to them first, the first thing you need to do is get some old maps and have a look what was there before your house was. Because 9 times out of 10, that'll probably give you the explanation as to what's going on. So what would you be like, Sarah, if you actually caught something like Sam just said, you saw the spirit materialise in your living room? How would you feel about it?
If I seen it through my own eyes, I would probably run out the front door.
Mm-hmm.
But if we'd caught it on camera, I think I'd be fine.
Yeah. I have seen a few things in houses I've lived in, so, you know, it ain't really bothered me. But I know if ever someone, you know, was to pop up here and Jake's found out about it, he'd never stay here again. Because that's the way he is. He'd be too frightened to come round, sort of thing. But me personally, I don't think it'd bother me. Because unless it was actually physically doing something to me, you know, he's probably been there longer than I have. So if it was going to do anything, it'd have probably done it by now.
But then, like I've said before, I'm the biggest scaredy cat out there, so I'm in the wrong profession completely.
Yeah, but sometimes that's the best thing to be because the reactions, you know, make the entertainment side of things.
Oh, I'm definitely entertaining because
yeah. You know, sometimes it's the way people actually react to these things that make things interesting.
See, Lee's seen another shadow person in this house, Brett, but I was literally sat next to him when he saw it, but I didn't see a thing.
Yeah, Jace says he wouldn't be frightened. Now, bear in mind, this is the guy who went to the loo the other night, right? So I crept out of bed, and he came tiptoeing back across the landing in complete darkness, and I was standing in the middle of the room, and he didn't realise I was there doing my usual monk pose, and he screamed the place down as he came through the bedroom door. So this is the guy who says he wouldn't be frightened. Leah says she's got a shadow figure in her house. Have you seen it often, Leah? Shadow says, unless you live in a place like Chaos and I, who live in and work in a hotel that's a spirit, we investigate basically every day. Why do you think so many hotels and places like that are haunted?
I think it's down to history and amount of people that come in and out of it.
Could be, Lee. Could be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I suppose hospitals are, you know, like.
Well, yeah, I mean, and
hotels are like hospitals, not to the extent of the death rate, but, you know, with the amount of people that pass through the doors, one, they've got to believe in their own, the energy there. But if there is depths there, it does make you wonder what cause.
Do you know what because I often wonder, well, even if somebody comes in and just leaves their energy behind, maybe then another one leaves their energy, and it builds up and forms something else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just replying to Leah. Leah says she's actually seen a shadow figure twice.
Leah's in here, but I haven't.
See, but Jace saw that shadow figure here and it didn't bother him. Now, I thought that would have freaked him out, but it didn't bother him. He just told me about it the next morning. He didn't wake me up or nothing and said, I've just seen something creeping across the bottom of the bed. He just told me the next morning. So I suppose he wouldn't run, I can frighten him because I know which buttons to press, but when it actually really happens, it don't seem to bother him.
She's like, yeah.
Do you know the strange thing too is a large percentage of UK pubs have some sort of a haunted history as well.
Well, where I'm originally from, back in the Midlands, Sam, there is actually called a pub called the Starving Rascal, and its sign actually shows a ghost standing outside the pub because there is a well-known ghost attached to the pub. That was apparently it's apparently the spirit of a guy who was turned away from the pub because this pub is centuries old, and he starved on the doorstep, and they get wet footprints coming into the pub overnight and stuff like that. So the pub has been renamed after the ghost that's in it, and he's actually on the pub sign.
If you look at the history and everything that's happened on the land where they're built as well, I think that that's a lot to do with it, maybe because of the build-up of energy and everything that's happened.
Do you think alcohol has anything to do with some of these hauntings?
I think if you get drunk enough, Sam, you can see anything.
Spirits of the liquid kind.
Lee says York has loads of haunted pubs.
Yeah, it has. York's absolutely.
I've never been. It's one place I keep saying I want to go to, and I've never been.
Have you not?
Never been to York.
Lee's got family there, so he took me a few times.
Yeah, I want to go to York. I want to see. It's very medieval, isn't it, York?
Brett, it's a date.
It's a
what?
A date.
It's a date.
Cool. There you go. Jace says there were also noises before I saw the shadow. There was walking movements and also something slightly tapping that you could hear. He never woke me up. He just told me the following morning.
York's beautiful though, Brett. It's lovely.
Do you think, though, a lot of ghost stories are twisted by people who sit in the pubs and tell them to one another when they're pissed and they get out of control, the stories, and one may have been, Sam, exactly. Yeah, Jay says it was moving around a bit. Yeah. It starts off this big, and by the time the story's finished, it was this big.
Exactly. Have you ever heard two drunk men talking to each other? And it's always the story gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they'll pass it on to somebody, and it just snowballs,
Lee says you come, James, if you like. Well,
that's why I'm skeptic of a lot of very old ghost stories.
And I am. Unless there's actually they've been documented at the time they happen. I'm very skeptical of listening to people's stories.
What interests me is if there was a time where people used to use hallucinogens all the time.
Yeah.
And imagine the stories that came from that escalated.
Well, a perfect example of that, Claire, is look at how many Victorian ghosts there is, and opium dens in Victorian times. They were accepted. Yes. They were an acceptable pastime. Smoking opium.
You know what? You're right, actually.
Probably more Victorian ghosts.
Yeah, because of the hallucinogens.
Than these anything else.
Oh yeah, cool.
Because opium was considered, like we consider smoking or drinking. Opium was considered exactly the same. There was nothing, there was no shame attached to smoking opium in Victorian times.
Mm-hmm.
So they've seen all sorts of weird and wonderful things.
Fucking environmental friendly fucking cigarettes.
And it's October now, so it's mushroom season as well. All the magic mushrooms are up. It would be interesting, but it would, joking apart, it will be interesting to see if these paranormal reports actually start to increase now, around October time, if people start claiming they're seeing more things.
My two friends that did magic mushrooms, and I wouldn't touch them because one was sat talking to a tree for a good 6 hours, which is fair enough, not wrong with that. The other one stripped down completely naked and started running around the street, and he swore blind that Denver, the purple dinosaur, was chasing him.
Yeah, well, I've tried them once in my younger days, and basically the TV kept crawling towards me, and it was not a very happy experience. And I've never.
Brett, I would just, because I'd not touched anything, I would just sat there. There was like one friend there having a full-on conversation with a tree, other one's running around. I'm watching his todger blowing wind, and I'm thinking, oh my god.
Yeah, but it will be interesting to note, if look at Sam smoking. It will be interesting to see if you start to see a lot more reports now of people saying, "Oh, I've seen something when I was walking down the road," because they've been on the magic mushrooms and stuff like that. Right, it does make you wonder.
Yeah, because I always think all those that go way back, but if you look at it, they did a lot of hallucinogens back then, so maybe that's where they come from. Some stories.
Yeah, Leah said she did magic mushrooms. Not going to lie, and enjoyed them.
See, some do. I
had a bad experience on them. The telly kept trying to get me. It was trying to mock me. I was convinced the telly was coming across the floor to get me. Every time I looked away and looked back at the telly, it crawled closer, and that just.
I've never done. I've never touched them.
I've never took heroin or anything like that, or ease or anything like that.
No.
I won't deny I've smoked weed because I have loads of times, but for me,
I've tried it. But
that's acceptable for me, but that's about my limits now, I'm afraid.
I don't drink or anything like that either. I'm completely teetotal.
I ain't a big drinker, Claire. I ain't a big drinker, neither is Jace, luckily.
No, not interested.
See, you get these people who go out on investigations and them smoking weed. It's got to be affecting your judgment. It's got to be. It's
to help, Brett. It's to help heighten the spirits.
Yeah, that's what they claim. But it's also increasing the chance that you're going to think some of the, because everybody knows the effects of cannabis. It can make you paranoid and all sorts of things. You can be, you can start convincing yourself you've heard all sorts and seen all sorts.
I was doing an experiment last night with smoke, and I've saved video for you to show you, Brett, because I was just trying different lighting out. I was seeing what it did and debunking it, because you've learned me to do that. It's what you've taught me to do. And I was testing out the smoke and seeing what shapes it would make from distances. And do you know, if you hold your smoke at a certain angle, right, and just film it right, it can look like a figure forming in the corner of the camera.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's just smoke.
See, I'm always wary of anything smoky because, the pareidolia in anything to do with smoke is just off the scale. It's totally off the scale.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've got quite a few shots that it's just smoke. I mean, it looks brilliant, but it's just smoke.
And anything that's going to produce a random pattern, you're going to get pareidolia because, normal people are, believe it or not, because if you start seeing pareidolia, it shows that you've got, a well-developed mind, believe it or not.
I'm fascinated by as you know, Brett, that's one of the things that fascinates me is the mind and pareidolia. Like we were talking the other day, me and Brett, and how when you're a kid, you're conditioned to do certain things, believe in certain things. I said to Brett, I'm just wondering if, let's just say you were brought up in a family of psychics and you were conditioned from young age to seeing spirits. Could maybe now you see them because you're conditioned to see them?
Yeah.
Could the mind work that way? Who knows? Who knows?
You don't know. We're in a field where nothing's proven. Right. It could be, as simple as we're all being fooled by our minds.
Exactly.
It's just as much of a viable proposition as that we're actually seeing dead people or elementals or anything.
Yeah, it is. That's why conditioning is a thing, because when you're conditioned from a young age, generally, no matter how hard you try, it's very hard to break those habits. Very hard.
Yeah, totally agree.
And then if they brought up squares in the family psychics and they're programmed from birth, whatever, and it could turn out that they end up saying that they're seeing things just because even though they're not seeing things, they end up saying
to fit in.
It's what it's expected of me. I need to turn around and say, I see dead people are just fit in. And that's that can lead to all sorts of trouble,
Well, I only brought it up to Brett because there's certain things that I see that I've discussed with Brett, and I said to Brett, but I've always seen these things. I don't know what they are, but I've always seen them. But I was brought up by two witches that always had those things around them, that told me where they were, that showed me where they were. Maybe my mind's just conditioned to see it because it's all it knows.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really there, but my mind works in a way.
Yeah, because your mind's expecting to see it.
Yeah, because it's all I know.
Yeah.
That's very interesting to me, that, because the mind's amazing. Like, wow.
What's your opinion on that, Sam?
She looks confused.
Now that's Sam's thinking face, that is.
So it's what?
I can't find StreamYard on my computer here.
Why are you looking for StreamYards? Have you closed the screen down?
Yeah, I can't bring it back up. I don't know where it is. Oh shit!
Have you been on the mushroom, Sam?
No, I just sent a couple of photographs, and it's an example. It's what it is an example of what light can do to an object.
Yeah,
I sent you 4 objects to Skype. These figures are actually made from
nothing's come through, Sam.
Chicken wire. Oh, I forgot to send them.
the screen down to send pictures. I can't get a screen back up, but I forgot to send them.
I sent them now.
I forgot to send them.
Hang on a minute. I'll try. Here you go. I've dragged one on the screen. So
I'll be back in a sec.
Okay.
I'm trying to find the tab here. I can't find it.
Did I tell you, Brett, they've only got Joel's bubble at school. The rest of the school's closed from positives. Yeah. And they've only got my eldest son's bubble. That's 4 students in the whole school that are attending at the moment, but they've still got to go.
Right. And before anybody notices and says anything, that is not a naked man in the pictures at the bottom. It's basically a demonstration of pareidolia.
Yeah, it is.
That is actually the woman's legs over a man's lap wearing shorts. Normally Scott and Sarah have already seen it. It is not a naked man. But that is basically what Sam is talking about. So go on, Sam, your chicken wire and light.
Yeah, the light is actually not even in the figure. The light is shining on the figure.
Yeah, and now that looks like it's
what is happening there is it is brand new chicken wire, and
right.
The chicken wire is it's new and it's very shiny, and once the light hits it, it reflects off it, and that's why it kind of looks solid in parts.
Yeah, but that actually looks like it's lit from within, doesn't it? Even though it's being lit from externally, it actually looks like the light is inside the figure.
Yeah, you can actually see the grass lit up. You know, you can see the grass lit up on the right-hand side of it.
Yeah.
But that actually was a display for Halloween, Derry, 2017, I think it was.
Right.
Halloween is a very, very big thing in Derry.
Why do you think it's big in Derry, Sam, and not anywhere else? Because, the Irish are quite religious, and, we know it's a very, a very Christian-based country. Why do you think it's just Derry who tends to be that way?
I don't know. They just made it a thing, and it's one of the world's biggest Halloween celebrations.
That way in there, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a way to bring in revenue to the city too,
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
We have an alarm going off there.
Yes. This is the new thing that's been happening in the last couple of weeks. The smoke alarm randomly goes off.
Yeah, I had that in an old house. The smoke alarm would go off. We had firemen out. There was nothing wrong with them. And then the boiler set on fire out of nowhere.
It's annoying. This afternoon, it must have been off about 100 times in the space of 2 hours. It's so fucking annoying.
It beeps constantly when batteries are low, though.
It does, but these are not the same now. They don't done like that, like you think no more.
Carbon monoxide detector.
And how often are you getting that alarm going off, Sarah?
All the time.
Every day.
That's weird.
That's how it started in other house for me, and then it got progressive. But we found out that the old lady died of cold. She froze to death for hypothermia because she didn't have enough eating. But yeah, our boiler sat on fire, so it was a bit weird that I was like,
Yeah, that is a bit strange.
Yeah, I'm not saying it is paranormal, but I'm saying it were interesting.
It's a new boiler we've got. And it's a pretty new smoke alarm system. It's that one. That one there that keeps going.
Yeah, ours were brand new, Sarah. Alarms were brand new. The boiler was brand new. Didn't make a difference.
Yeah, Leah says loves Halloween, and I've just put Samhain is my favourite time of the year. I love Samhain.
Yeah, I love Samhain. It's like Witch's New Year.
Yeah, love it. James, I would say that whoever did the graphics for the scene knows lol. And now I haven't seen that one, but I'm talking about a film. Do you think, that houses can be affected like that, like you just said, where, an old woman froze to death, died of hypothermia, and then the next person who comes in notices the house is always boiling hot or something?
Yeah, I think it can, because of the stone tape theory. I think it can collect energy, but I'm not sure how it would work, or if it would be a paranormal thing. I don't know, but I think it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Claire, when are you doing tarot readings? I'll get on with it, Leah. I'll get on with it as soon as I can.
Oh, that reminds me, I've got to set a stream up for Sunday for you lot. I've got to work out how to get this camera facing down on this new desk. That's what's holding me up at the moment. But I need to sort a tarot reading session out for Sunday for the channel members.
Well, I was going to do a live and do some tarot readings. If you want to let me take over, Brett, it's up to you. If you can't, or we can do it together if you like.
Yeah. You can do.
I'm just, as you know, I've been very scared to go live, but I suppose I've got to sooner or later.
Yeah. I wouldn't let anybody get to you, Claire.
Yeah, but you know me.
Yeah. There's enough mobs anyway to stop any hassle going on. So what's your opinion on that, Sam? Do you think past events can affect an house in the future?
Possibly, like if the stone tape theory is kind of a thing,
Yeah.
Energies can be very heavy in some places and that, where there's a lot of, I did know the history to Sharon Rectory and that, but I tried to put it at the back of my mind, but there was a number of us that says the minute we went in the door, the energy was heavy, even though it was beautifully decorated. It had dolls and porcelain and china.
Dolls and porcelain.
She has a thing for there was fairies, gnomes, and dolls.
So I couldn't be coping with the dolls. See, Jace will tell you if he's still in chat. The old house I lived in had got a really horrible atmosphere to it. It was a really downy type atmosphere to the house. Now, the first day we came to look at this before I decided I was going to rent it. We came in, and as soon as I walked out, the first thing Jace said to me and I said to him was, "Did you notice how different and nicer the atmosphere was in there than to where I am?" It was that palpable. And that old house, it was like you've got something on you, a weight on you all the while.
I know what you mean.
This place is entirely different. It's quite light and airy in here. I get no negative vibes in this place at all. No. Apart from that shadow thing, but I don't even get anything negative off. I just got curiosity. I just got the impression it was curious.
Lee said he didn't feel nothing negative though. When he's seen them, he's just seen them, and it's just okay, you know, like. But
yeah, there you go. Jay says he always felt ill in the old days, really tired, and that was like me as well. I was constant. I know I'm tired here, but it's only since I've had the heart attack sort of thing. But
I know
that's the result of my health issues now.
I know that one of the older houses that I did live in, I had a very interesting thing happen, and I actually completely blocked off the upstairs toilet because of it, because we had a toilet upstairs and we had one downstairs. Now, it was my eldest son that said, "Mum, there's a man upstairs in the toilet and he's got a needle stuck in him." And I thought a druggie had broke into my house.
Yeah.
So obviously I run outside and I'm like, I'm thinking about, and then I'm realizing, hang on a minute, no one could have got into my house with all the dogs. I've always had 3 or 4 dogs.
Yeah.
So I goes upstairs and there's nothing. Now, I didn't like the feeling in that particular place, but I never thought anything of it, I'll be honest. But my eldest son swore that he saw a man in that toilet with a needle in his neck. He said he was very pale, very, not blue, but tingy colour. Yeah. And he saw him a few times. It weren't until I moved out that I learned a 22-year-old man had died of a heroin overdose, not in the toilet, but outside of the toilet on the landing. So that I found interesting. I didn't particularly see anything. I didn't.
But it ain't saying, Claire, that he hadn't actually injected himself in the toilet and then fell out the toilet into the hole where they found him.
Right. But my son did. My son did. It was my son that, but I never did. I found that interesting.
Yeah, Pat says, I have negative energies in my house. I see the shadows frequently. Have you and Scott ever seen anything, Sarah? Have you ever been in an house where you felt, not comfortable in it?
I'll let Sarah go first because she always tells me to shut up anyway. So, I'll talk first, basically.
You can talk, Scott. I'm thinking.
In my old flat, I used to live myself, and I have told this story before, but there was quite a few things happened to me. But not happened to me, happened, I should say. Like some TV remote I found underneath my bed one night, and my keys, out the front door getting moved and what have you. In here, twice I've seen. I was sitting in the bed one day watching a film, and I was facing the door, and I saw. I can only describe it as a kind of black shadow.
Hang on a minute. Is your cat behind the curtain?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so I keep seeing something move behind the curtain.
Don't do what I did earlier.
That was.
I kept seeing movement behind the curtain. I'm thinking, what was moving behind the curtain?
Well, the 2 of them are up there, so I just leave them there,
Yeah.
What I was going to do.
While they're quiet and out the way.
Exactly. So if they're happy up there, they can stay up there.
Yeah.
Excuse the French. I see that it was just a glance came by the door. And then another time I seen, what I thought, and I was in the house myself, was a solid figure going by the door, but again, it was a split second and it was gone.
Mm-hmm.
But since we've done that second investigation in here, this smoke alarms went off.
Keep going off.
And last night, as we've done the wall-top camera, I put the 3 cat balls on a cushion bit in the chair behind where Sarah is. And the minute, I put them down, and about a minute or 2 later, we were still in the room. One of the balls went off, and the same second the ball went off, the smoke alarm went off. And then the 2 of them back off at the same time. So, there is something in here.
I haven't got any flashy balls.
It's cat balls clear, you can get them. I think get them in eBay or something like that, but
I'll tell you what I've got, Brett, that you might like to try and use. I've got a strip light, basically. And this
I remember you saying about that with the sensor.
It's motion censored, but it can only go off when it goes over a particular, there's like a sensor on top.
Yeah.
Something has to pass over that sensor for it to go off. But we'd have to test it first and see, if it...
Yeah. I'll give that a try. I won't mind trying that.
Well, you can have it. It's not doing no. Just like that.
Sarah? Go on, I'll
Scott said we notice things in the hall. A few times I've noticed something is like walking up and down the hall.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously my desk is in the living room and that's the kitchen door. And sometimes it can be really, really cold right next to me. But the other side's roasting.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll hear stuff like getting moved and stuff in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But the cats are in my Scott. That's how you constantly see me in lives, like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I'll actually go up and check the kitchen to make sure that the cat hasn't been locked in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not neat.
Sorry?
What were you going to say?
Oh, it was just about Claire's, mentioning the strip lights. You might have seen, on one of our investigations at Cumber House, that these black mats with all these lights on them, they're actually strip lights, and the sensors are in different parts of the mat.
I thought it were a big mat.
What they done was they put the strip lights on rubber mats and they roll them out. So if something disturbs them and disturbs them in a certain point, certain strips of light will go off.
Yeah.
So they have some sort of an idea what direction the disturbance happened.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a good idea because you can't stick them down.
James says, I went to look at an house and it was like a car hitting you when you walked in. Whatever was in that house was really bad. The estate agent then confessed that all the other viewers had felt the same. James, I experienced that when I was getting married, and it's a place called Aidenhill House in the Midlands. I've mentioned it before. Most Haunted have done a thing there, but we went to view it because we were going to have our wedding reception there. And I walked in. Yeah, I walked in the place, and within 5 minutes I had to leave. Honestly, the atmosphere in the place, I couldn't deal with it. And then the other interest, because I want to get these before they scroll off. The other interesting one in the comments is what Pat just put. The one that freaked me out the most was the duvet getting lifted as if someone was getting in the other side of the bed. I've got to be honest, of all the things that could happen, that would probably be the one that would probably freak me out the most.
That's Claire's big camera.
Well, it's not. It's very, very, very old, Brett. Very old.
That's see them the good 35mm cameras. That's them good for getting you decent evidence on, because they ain't digital at all.
That's never been used, believe it or not. But I like collecting old things. I'm weird.
Yeah.
And if I see anything like that at a charity shop or a stall, I buy it, because I always find someone wants to use it for something. So that's what I was thinking. You said you wanted old things to use when you went out. That'd be a brilliant thing to use, that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would definitely, because it's
you can take it and you can use it all you want.
You have to bring it. We'll use the 35. I'll get some 35mm film.
It's an Olympus. Yeah, just wants film.
Yeah, I'll get some 35mm film for it, because it's handy to be using that in conjunction with like your digital camcorders to see if it picks up anything different.
It's not.
Look at this. Oh.
I'll tell you something, Claire. They're some of the best camcorders you can still use.
Yeah,
they really are. Them some of the best camcorders you can still use.
That Sony Night Shop, the old tape one, it actually was too good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've got things like them. If you want to use them, you can. It's got cassettes with them, Brett. You're more than welcome to take them and use them.
Yeah, I'll use them. Cheers.
Because I ain't got a fucking clue. I just like that. I like how they look.
Yeah.
I'm not
that with certain things. I often find I get attracted to things and people go, why do you like that ugly thing? And I'm like, well, I don't actually like the look of it. I just get a nice sense of it.
Yeah.
Well, it's still even
got it's got label on it as well, because I've just not used it.
No.
What's it say?
Just
35mm camera.
Yeah, 35mm camera, brand new, still in wrappers.
Not used.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's got auction number on it, because we're at now. It'll have been at auction at Elsica.
Yeah. You know, but it's that kind of equipment that, you know, it'll give you the best evidence.
Well, go for it. It's there, Brett, to use. You can have it and use it by all means.
Brilliant. Cheers. What time is it?
11:30.
Half 11. Guys, we've been going over 2 hours. That's done well. Right, guys, I think I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. I'd like to say thank you to everybody for coming in, joining the chat and putting their comments and stuff in, because it's always interesting reading them. I'd like to say thank you to Sarah, Scott, Claire and Sam. You've been brilliant. Don't leave when we've shut the What's It, because we'll have a quick chat when we've closed the What's It down. I'm definitely going to try and get a card reading set up this Sunday for the members, for the card reading members. I did do a PDF format for a friend the other day, which I showed Claire, which she was really pleased with. So, yeah, that's another option I can use for the card readings. So thank you all. Have a great night, and I will see you next Friday with all these. Is that alarm again?
Yeah.
There you go. Look, happening live on the stream. We will be back Friday with all these lot again. So we'll see you then. Have a great night, everybody, and look after yourselves. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night, Claire.
Bye.
Night all.